He came home early that day, and what he saw stopped him cold. His 7-year-old twins, laughing, actually laughing, with the maid. Justin Powell hadn't heard that sound in 11 months, not since his wife died. He stood in the doorway, frozen, because for the first time in almost a year, his house didn't feel like a grave. It felt like home again. When Melissa Powell died, she didn't just leave behind a husband and 2 sons. She left behind a family that forgot how to breathe. Justin buried himself in work, stayed late at the office, came home after the boys were asleep, left before they woke up. Not because he didn't love them, because every time he looked at Carter and Trey, he saw her face, and the pain was too much to carry. The twins, they carried their grief differently. They stopped talking, stopped eating right, stopped being children. Instead, they raged. They broke things, threw things, poured paint on floors, cut up furniture, screamed without making a sound. 8 nannies came through that house, 8 women with experience and degrees and plans. Every single one left. Some quit, some Justin fired because they were harsh with his boys. One lasted 47 minutes. Another called them possessed. But they weren't possessed. They were grieving, and nobody saw it. Then Grace Martin showed up. She wasn't hired to watch the children, just to clean, cook a little, keep the house from falling apart. Her first morning, she walked into chaos. Cereal everywhere, paint on the floor, the boys watching her from behind the counter, eyes hard, testing her, waiting for her to scream like all the others. But Grace didn't scream. She looked at the mess, looked at them, and said, quiet and steady, "You made it. You'll clean it. I'll help." No yelling, no threats, no phone call to their father. Just presence. The boys didn't know what to do with that. So they cleaned, and Grace cleaned beside them, not above them, beside them. Days passed. Grace didn't try to fix them. She didn't force them to talk. She didn't tell them to stop being sad. She just showed up, made meals, sat with them, let them be angry. Let them be silent. Let them grieve without judgment. And slowly, something shifted. Trey started drawing again. Carter did his homework without being asked. They stopped destroying things, started building things, started trusting her. One night, Grace found them sleeping in their mother's closet, wrapped in her clothes, trying to hold on to her smell before it disappeared. She didn't scold them, didn't wake them. She brought them pillows and a blanket, and sat outside the door until they fell asleep. Because Grace understood something no one else did. These boys didn't need someone to manage them, they needed someone to mourn with them. Then came that Thursday afternoon. Justin's meeting got cancelled. He drove home early, expecting silence or screaming, the usual. Instead, he heard laughter. He walked toward the living room and stopped dead. Grace was on her knees, covered in paint, wearing yellow rubber gloves. Carter was beside her, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. And Trey quiet, withdrawn. Trey was smiling, actually smiling. They weren't cleaning a mess. They were making art out of it, together. Justin's throat tightened, his eyes burned. This wasn't a nanny managing his children. This was someone loving them. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of his own home, Justin Powell realized something that brought him to his knees. He'd been searching for someone to control his sons. God sent someone to heal them. Before we continue, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and comment below, where are you watching from? Because this story is proof. Proof that God doesn't always send the person you asked for. He sends the person you need, the one who won't try to fix you, the one who will sit with you in your pain and remind you that you're not alone. That's Grace. Not just her name, that's what she carried. Stay with me, this story is just getting started. Grace Martin pulled up to the Powell house at 7 in the morning. Big house, quiet street, the kind of neighborhood where people kept their lawns perfect and their problems hidden. She grabbed her bag from the passenger seat and took a breath. New job, new start, just cleaning and cooking, nothing complicated. She was wrong. The front door was unlocked. She stepped inside and called out, "Hello, Mr. Powell?" No answer. She walked further in. That's when she saw it. The living room looked like a battlefield. Red paint, Blue paint, green paint, smeared across the hardwood floor in angry streaks, cereal scattered everywhere, Cheerios, Fruit Loops, crushed under her shoes as she walked, couch cushions pulled off and stacked into a wall, toy soldiers lined up like they were defending territory. Grace stopped, set her bag down slowly. This wasn't an accident. This was on purpose. She heard breathing, looked up. 2 boys crouched behind the kitchen island, watching her, their eyes sharp, faces blank, waiting. Grace recognized that look. She'd seen it before. Not anger, fear. These boys weren't being bad, they were being loud enough to see if anyone would stay. Grace took another breath, then she walked straight into the mess. Glass crunched under her feet, paint smeared on her shoes. She didn't care. She stopped in the middle of it all and looked at them. "This is something," she said, calm, no anger in her voice. Carter, the older twin by 4 minutes, stood up first, arms crossed, chin high. "We did it," he said, like a challenge. Grace nodded. "I can see that. Took you a while, I bet." Trey stayed low, watching. Carter frowned. "You're supposed to yell." "Why?" "Because," he pointed at the floor. "Look at it." Grace looked, then looked back at him. "It's a mess. Messes get cleaned. That's how it works." She walked to the kitchen, found paper towels and a trash bag, came back and handed the paper towels to Carter. "You made it. You clean it. I'll help." Carter didn't move. "You're not calling our dad?" "Your dad's at work, and he already knows you're angry. This just shows him how much." Carter's mouth opened, closed. He didn't know what to say to that. Trey stood up slowly, walked over, took the trash bag from Grace without a word, and started picking up cereal. Carter watched his brother. Then, like it hurt him to do it, he knelt down and started wiping paint with the paper towels. Grace got on her knees beside them, started working on a patch of blue near the window. Nobody talked. Grace hummed softly. Some old song her grandmother used to sing. Nothing fancy, just noise to fill the silence. 20 minutes passed. The floor started to show through again. Carter sat back on his heels, looked at Grace. "You're not like the others." Grace kept wiping. "How so?" "They all yelled, or cried, or left. I'm still here." Trey glanced at his brother, then at Grace, then back at the floor. "She's weird," he whispered. Carter nodded. "Yeah." But he didn't say it mean. He said it like he was trying to figure her out. Grace stood up, stretched her back, and looked at the progress. "Better. Not perfect, but better. You two hungry?" The boys looked at each other. "I don't like eggs," Carter said quickly. Grace shrugged. "Good thing I was thinking toast." She walked to the kitchen, found bread, butter, started cooking. Behind her, she heard the boys whispering. She didn't turn around. Just let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them feel safe enough to stay in the room with her. That was enough for now. While Grace was downstairs making toast, Justin Powell sat in his office downtown, staring at his phone. 8 missed calls from the nanny agency. He already knew what they'd say. He called back anyway. "Mr. Powell, I'm afraid we've exhausted our options." Justin closed his eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means we don't have anyone else willing to take the position. Your sons have become well-known." Well-known. That was a polite way of saying blacklisted. Justin hung up without saying goodbye. 8 nannies, 8 women, all of them gone. He could still see their faces. The first one, a woman in her 50s with 30 years of experience, lasted 3 days. Carter cut the strap off her purse with kitchen scissors. She called Justin at work, voice shaking, and said, "Those boys need more help than I can give." The second one, younger, patient, she tried everything. Reward charts, consequences, gentle parenting techniques she'd learned from books. Trey didn't speak to her once. Not one word in 4 days. She left a resignation letter on the kitchen counter. The third, the fourth, the fifth. One found her hamster released into the air vents. Took 2 days to get it out. One got paint poured in her hair while she was sleeping on the couch. One threatened to call child services, said the boys showed signs of violence. Violence. Justin wanted to laugh, or cry. His boys weren't violent. They were 7 years old, and their mother was dead, and nobody knew what to do with that. Not even him. The 7th nanny just disappeared, went to lunch and never came back. Didn't even pick up her last paycheck. And the 8th, the one that lasted 47 minutes. She ran out the front door screaming that the twins were possessed. Possessed. Justin poured himself a whiskey. It was 10 in the morning and he didn't care. He looked at the photo on his desk. Melissa, smiling. The boys on either side of her, sand on their feet, ocean behind them. That was 2 summers ago. They'd driven to the coast, spent a week doing nothing but building sandcastles and eating ice cream for dinner. Carter had laughed so hard at something Melissa said that milk came out of his nose. Trey had fallen asleep on her lap every single night. Justin couldn't remember the last time his sons laughed like that. Couldn't remember the last time they looked at him without anger. Couldn't remember the last time he felt like their father instead of their warden. His phone buzzed. Another agency. The housekeeper one. "Mr. Powell, we're sending someone tomorrow. Grace Martin. She comes highly recommended." Justin barely heard it. "Fine, whatever. Someone needs to keep the house standing." He hung up. Didn't think twice about it. Didn't know that the woman showing up tomorrow wasn't there to clean his floors. She was there to save his family. He finished his whiskey, poured another. Downstairs at home, his boys were eating toast with a stranger. And for the first time in 11 months, they weren't planning their next attack. But Justin didn't know that yet. He wouldn't know it for days, and by the time he figured it out, everything would be different. The next morning, Grace arrived before sunrise. The house was dark, quiet. She let herself in with the key Justin had left under the mat. She found the boys already awake. They sat at the kitchen table in their pajamas. No food in front of them, no adult in sight. Just 2 small bodies in a big, empty kitchen, waiting for nothing. Grace set her bag down softly. "You two are up early." Carter shrugged. Dad left already. 6 in the morning. Their father gone before they even had breakfast. Grace didn't say anything about that. Just walked to the fridge, opened it, found eggs, butter, bread. She started cooking. The boys watched her. She didn't ask what they wanted. Didn't make it complicated. Just scrambled eggs, toast with butter, orange juice in small glasses. Simple. Warm. She set the plates in front of them, sat down across the table with her own plate. Carter pushed his away immediately. "I don't eat eggs." "That's fine, but you should eat something." She took a bite of her own food, chewed slowly, didn't stare at them, didn't pressure them. Trey picked up his fork, poked at the eggs, then took a tiny bite. Carter watched his brother like he'd betrayed him. But a minute later, Carter pulled his plate back, started eating, didn't say a word about it. Grace hid her smile behind her coffee cup. After breakfast, she started cleaning the kitchen. The boys lingered. They didn't leave. Didn't go watch TV or hide in their rooms. They stayed. And then Carter made his move. He picked up his glass of orange juice, looked right at Grace, and knocked it off the table. The glass shattered. Juice spread across the floor like a small flood. He stood there, waiting, chin up. This was the test, the real one. Grace looked at the mess, looked at him. Her face didn't change. "Glasses break sometimes. Towels are in that drawer." She pointed, then went back to wiping the counter. Carter didn't move. "You're not mad?" "Mad about what?" "Juice spills. You clean it up. Life keeps going." She wasn't angry. Wasn't cold either, just steady. Carter stood there for a long moment. Then he walked to the drawer, pulled out a towel, got on his knees, and started soaking up the juice. Trey grabbed another towel without being asked, helped his brother pick up the glass pieces. Grace watched from the corner of her eye, said nothing. When they finished, she handed Carter a small broom for the tiny shards. "Yesterday was paint," she said. "Today it's just juice. That's progress." Carter looked at her. Something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, maybe curiosity. He didn't know what to do with someone who wouldn't break. Later that afternoon, Grace was vacuuming the living room when she noticed something under the couch. A photograph, crumpled, bent at the corners. She pulled it out carefully. Melissa, beautiful, smiling, the twins on either side of her at some beach. Everyone happy, everyone whole. Grace smoothed out the wrinkles with gentle fingers, She didn't ask questions, didn't call the boys over. She just placed it on the mantel, right where it belonged. Then she went back to cleaning. That night, after Grace left, Justin came home to find his sons already in bed. And on the mantel, a photo he hadn't seen in months. He stared at it for a long time, didn't know who put it there, but he didn't move it. And in their bedroom, Carter whispered to his brother in the dark, "She's still here." Trey nodded. "Yeah. Think she'll come back tomorrow?" Silence. Then Trey whispered, "I hope so." Neither of them had hoped for anything in a very long time. Grace noticed it on the third day. Trey didn't talk. Not really. He'd nod, shake his head, sometimes whisper one or two words to Carter. But he didn't speak. Carter spoke for both of them, answered questions before Trey could open his mouth, finished his sentences, became his voice. But Grace watched closer, and she saw something else. Trey drew. Constantly, quietly, in corners of the house where nobody looked. That afternoon, she found him in his bedroom, sitting on the floor, sketchbook open, pencil moving fast. He didn't hear her come in. Grace stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching. His drawings weren't happy. Dark clouds, empty houses, a woman with no face, standing far away on a hill, trees with no leaves, grief, on paper, in pencil. Grace didn't interrupt. She walked in quietly and sat on the floor a few feet away from him. Not too close, just present. Trey glanced up, saw her, tensed. But she didn't say anything, just sat there. She pulled a piece of paper from his stack, found a pencil, and started drawing. Terrible drawing. Stick figures with giant heads, a house that looked like a box with triangle on top, a sun with a smiley face. Kindergarten level. She kept drawing anyway. Trey watched her from the corner of his eye. After a few minutes, something happened. His mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Grace held up her drawing. "What do you think?" Trey looked at it, then at her. His eyes said everything. "That's awful." Grace laughed. "I know. I'm terrible at this. Maybe you could show me how to make it less terrible?" Trey hesitated, then slowly reached over and took her paper. He studied it seriously, then picked up his pencil and started correcting her proportions, made the head smaller, the body longer, added actual fingers instead of lines. He didn't speak, but he taught. Grace watched his hands move. Careful, precise. They sat like that for an hour, drawing, erasing, trying again, no words needed. Just two people breathing in the same space, creating something together. Carter found them later, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. "What are you doing?" Grace looked up. "Drawing, badly. Your brother's helping me be less bad." Carter's face tightened. Jealousy, quick and sharp. But Grace didn't miss a beat. She grabbed another paper, slid it toward the empty spot next to Trey. "There's room." Carter didn't move for a long moment. Then, like it cost him something, he sat down, grabbed a pencil. The three of them drew in silence. At some point, Trey started a new page. He drew 3 stick figures, small ones, cleaning paint off a floor, yellow gloves on their hands. He slid it toward Grace without looking at her. She picked it up, studied it, her chest tightened. "That's us," she said softly. "From the first day." Trey nodded. Then he whispered, so quiet she almost missed it. "You stayed." Grace set the drawing down gently. "I did. The others didn't." "No, they didn't." Trey looked at her finally. Really looked, his eyes wet but not crying. "Why?" Grace held his gaze. "Because I don't leave people who need me." Carter stopped drawing, looked at his brother, then at Grace. The room felt heavy, full of something none of them could name. Then Carter asked the question that had been burning in him for days. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" Grace nodded. "Yes." "Promise?" She paused. "I don't make promises I can't keep, but yes, I'll be here." Carter held her eyes for a long moment, searching for the lie. He didn't find one. That night, after Grace left, Carter lay awake in bed, thinking. Tomorrow, he'd test her again. Because people always left. Always. and he needed to know if she would too. It was almost 11 at night when Grace heard it. She'd stayed late to finish laundry. Justin still wasn't home. The house sat quiet and heavy, the way houses do when grief lives inside the walls. Grace was folding one of Trey's small shirts when she heard footsteps upstairs. Quick, light, moving with purpose. She set the shirt down, listened. A door creaked open, then footsteps again. 2 sets this time. Grace dried her hands on a towel and walked toward the stairs. She climbed them slowly, not wanting to scare whoever was moving around up there. The hallway stretched dark in front of her. Every door closed. Except one. The master bedroom. Grace had walked past that door a dozen times since she'd started. It stayed shut, always, like everyone in the house had agreed to pretend it didn't exist. But tonight, it was cracked open, just a sliver of darkness beyond. Grace moved toward it, her feet silent on the carpet. She heard breathing inside, soft, unsteady. Her hand touched the door. She pushed gently. The bedroom opened before her like a time capsule, bed still made with the same comforter, pillows arranged just so, curtains pulled closed, a water glass on the nightstand, empty but still there. Everything exactly how Melissa left it 11 months ago. The room smelled stale, unused, forgotten. But the breathing wasn't coming from the bedroom, it was coming from inside the closet. Grace crossed the room carefully. Each step felt heavy with something she couldn't name. The closet door stood open. And there they were. Carter and Trey, both of them curled up on the floor like small animals hiding from a storm. Around them, pulled down from hangers and scattered everywhere, were their mother's clothes. Dresses, sweaters, blouses, a blue scarf wrapped around Trey's shoulders, a cardigan clutched in Carter's hands. They weren't crying, weren't making any sound at all, just lying there with their faces pressed into the fabric, breathing deep, eyes closed, trying to find her. Grace's chest tightened so hard she couldn't breathe for a moment. She knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to smell their mother before the last traces of her disappeared forever, before the perfume faded, before the lotion scent vanished, before she became just a memory instead of something they could still feel. Grace stood frozen in the doorway, tears burning her eyes. These boys, these small broken boys, coming here in the middle of the night to hold on to their mother any way they could. She could have scolded them, could have told them to go back to bed, could have called their father. But Grace understood grief. She'd held her own mother's hand during a stroke. She'd sat in hospital rooms that smelled like antiseptic and loss. She knew what it meant to be desperate for one more moment with someone who was gone. So she turned around, walked downstairs quietly, found 2 pillows and a soft blanket, came back up. The boys hadn't moved, still breathing in their mother's clothes. Grace knelt down slowly, set the pillows beside their heads, draped the blanket over them with the gentleness of someone handling something precious. Carter's eyes flew open. He saw her, and his whole body went rigid. "Here it comes," his eyes said, "the lecture, the punishment, the 'this isn't healthy' speech." Grace just sat down on the floor outside the closet, back against the wall, close but not intruding. Carter stared at her, confusion all over his face. Then, his chin trembled. "She's fading," he whispered. "Her smell, it's almost gone." Grace's heart shattered quietly. "What did she smell like?" Trey answered first, his voice so small it barely existed. "Lavender and vanilla." Carter added, "That lotion she used, the pink bottle, she put it on every night before bed." Grace nodded. "Those are good things to remember. Keep remembering them." She didn't tell them to move on, didn't say time heals all wounds, didn't offer empty comfort. She just sat with them, present, steady. Trey whispered again, "Dad doesn't come in here. Maybe it hurts too much right now." Carter's voice cracked. "It hurts us too." "I know, baby. I know it does." She stayed until they fell asleep, both of them wrapped in their mother's clothes, finally peaceful. She didn't move them. When Justin came home after midnight, Grace met him at the door. "The boys are sleeping in their mother's closet. I think they need to be there tonight." Justin's face broke open, raw, wounded. But he didn't go upstairs. He just nodded. And something between them shifted. Justin made a decision. He needed a professional, someone with training, degrees, someone who knew how to fix broken children. So he hired Dr. Patricia Simmons, child behavioral specialist, 15 years of experience, a resume that could fill a book. She arrived on Monday with a leather briefcase, a clipboard, and a color-coded schedule. Grace was in the kitchen when she walked in. She heard the woman's heels clicking on the floor. Confident, sharp. "I'll need the boy's full history," Dr. Simmons told Justin in the living room. "Every incident, every outburst, every tantrum documented." Grace's stomach tightened. She stayed quiet, kept wiping the counter, but she listened. "Structure," Dr. Simmons said. "That's what these children need. Clear boundaries, predictable routines, measurable consequences." She made it sound so simple. The boys met her that afternoon. Carter sized her up immediately. His eyes went flat, that familiar wall sliding back into place. Trey shrank behind his brother. "We're going to establish some ground rules," Dr. Simmons told them. She didn't kneel, didn't soften her voice. Just stood there with her clipboard. No art supplies without permission, no unstructured activities, meals at designated times only. Carter's jaw tightened. Trey disappeared into himself. Grace watched from the doorway. Everything inside her screamed wrong, wrong, wrong. But she wasn't the expert. She was just the maid. 2 days passed. The laughter stopped. The drawing stopped. The small moments of trust that Grace had built so carefully began to crumble like sandcastles in rain. Dr. Simmons tracked everything, every behavior, every reaction, stars for good, demerits for bad, a system built on rewards and punishments. She didn't see the grief, only the symptoms. Then came Thursday. Carter sat at the kitchen table, homework spread in front of him. He'd been fighting it for 20 minutes, pencil tapping, leg bouncing, jaw clenched. Grace was nearby, folding towels, not hovering, just present. She watched him struggle, watched him erase the same problem 3 times. Then something shifted. Carter took a breath, picked up his pencil, started writing. He finished one problem, then another, then another. His shoulders relaxed, the tension in his face softened. He finished the whole page, every single problem. When he set his pencil down, he looked up at Grace. Something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Pride. "Can I have a cookie?" he asked quietly. "Just one." Grace's heart swelled. This boy, this angry, hurting boy. He'd just done something he hadn't done in months, maybe longer. "You earned it," she said. She walked to the counter, took one cookie from the jar, handed it to him. His fingers had just wrapped around it when the kitchen door swung open. Dr. Simmons stood there, face tight. "What is happening here?" Grace straightened. "He finished his homework. All of it. I gave him a cookie. I specifically told him no sweets today. He had an incident this morning." Carter froze, cookie in hand, eyes darting between them. Grace didn't back down. "He just accomplished something he hasn't done in months. That deserves recognition." Dr. Simmons stepped closer. Her voice turned sharp. "You're undermining everything I'm building. These children need consistency, not someone rewarding bad behavior. Finishing homework isn't bad behavior. He earned a consequence this morning. You don't get to override that." Carter stood there, small, caught between 2 adults fighting over him. Grace looked at this woman with her degrees and her clipboard and her complete blindness to what actually mattered. "You're so focused on controlling them that you can't see them." Dr. Simmons' face went red. "You're a housekeeper. You clean floors. Don't pretend you understand child psychology." The words hung in the air, cold, dismissive. Grace felt them land, felt the sting. But she also felt Carter's eyes on her, watching, waiting to see if she'd fold. She didn't. "I understand that boy just did something brave, and you want to punish him for something that happened 6 hours ago." Dr. Simmons turned to Carter. "Put the cookie back." Carter looked at Grace, then at Dr. Simmons, then at the cookie. He set it on the table, walked out of the kitchen without a word. The silence he left behind felt like a funeral. That night, Dr. Simmons called Justin. "It's me or the housekeeper. I can't work like this. And Justin, sitting in his office with his head in his hands, realized he had to choose. The expert everyone trusted, or the woman his sons actually needed. Dr. Simmons quit the next morning. She didn't wait for Justin to decide, left a note on the kitchen counter, and was gone before anyone woke up. Grace found the note when she arrived. These children need psychiatric intervention beyond my scope. This household is dysfunctional. I recommend immediate professional help. Signed with her full credentials. Grace read it twice, then folded it and left it where Justin would find it. The boys came downstairs an hour later. They looked around the kitchen, saw Grace, saw the empty space where Dr. Simmons usually stood with her clipboard. Carter spoke first. She's gone. Yes. His whole body sagged. Relief and fear mixed together on his face. Because of me? The cookie thing? Grace shook her head. No, baby, because she didn't understand what you needed. Trey stood close to his brother, silent, watching. Carter's voice got smaller. Are you leaving too? The question cut deep. Grace stopped what she was doing, walked over to them, knelt down so she was eye level. I'm not leaving. Promise? I'm here. That's what matters. Carter stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, walked to the table, sat down. Trey followed. Grace made them breakfast, eggs and toast, same as always. They ate in silence, but it wasn't a heavy silence, just quiet. Justin found the note that evening. He sat in his office and read it 3 times. Each word felt like an accusation. Dysfunctional. Beyond scope. Psychiatric intervention. His sons needed more help than experts could provide. That's what she was saying. His boys were too damaged, too broken. He poured himself a drink. Then another. His phone sat on the desk. He could call another agency, find another specialist, someone with better credentials, more experience. But his hand didn't move toward the phone. Instead, he thought about last week, coming home to silence, finding that photo on the mantel, the one he couldn't bear to look at, but someone had placed it there with care. He thought about the twins sleeping in Melissa's closet, how Grace had let them stay, how she'd understood something he'd been too blind to see. His boys weren't acting out because they were broken. They were acting out because they were drowning, and he'd been too busy trying to fix them, to simply be with them. The whiskey burned his throat. Downstairs, he could hear Grace in the kitchen, the boys' voices, low, calm. When was the last time he'd eaten dinner with his sons? He couldn't remember. Justin set down his glass, stood up, walked to the door of his office. His hand rested on the handle for a long moment. Then he opened it. The hallway stretched before him, kitchen at the end, light spilling out, voices. He took one step, then another. But halfway there, his phone rang. Work. He stopped, looked toward the kitchen, looked at his phone. The familiar pull, the easy escape. He answered, Powell here. And just like that, he retreated back into his office. The door clicked shut. Down the hall, in the kitchen, Carter looked up from his plate. Was that Dad? Grace nodded. Carter waited, listening for footsteps. None came. He went back to his food, face blank, walls up. But in his bedroom that night, Carter whispered to Trey, Tomorrow, we're going to do something. Something big. Trey looked at him. She stayed when the doctor lady left, but Dad didn't come down. Trey understood. What are we going to do? Carter's eyes hardened. We're going to see if she really means it. If she'll stay no matter what. The ultimate test. One final chance to see if Grace was different. Or, just like everyone else. The boys woke up early. They had a plan. Carter led the way to the garage. Trey followed close behind. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. In the corner, behind old boxes and dusty tools, they found what they were looking for. Paint cans, left over from when their mom had repainted the guest room, red, blue, yellow. Carter grabbed 2, Trey grabbed 1. They carried them inside, quiet, careful. The living room stretched before them, clean floors, expensive furniture, everything perfect. Everything their father cared about. Carter popped open the first can. Red paint gleamed inside. He looked at his brother. "Ready?" Trey nodded. Carter tipped the can. Red paint poured out like blood, spreading across the hardwood floor. Trey opened the yellow, added to the mess. Blue followed. They didn't stop, didn't hesitate, just kept pouring until the floor looked like a wound. Then they stepped back and waited. This was it, the final test. No one could ignore this. No one could stay calm after this. Grace would scream. She'd call their father. She'd quit. Everyone broke eventually. They heard her footsteps, coming from the kitchen, getting closer. Carter's heart pounded. Grace appeared in the doorway. She stopped. Her eyes moved across the floor, taking in the destruction, red bleeding into yellow, blue swirling through both, a masterpiece of chaos. The boys watched her face, waiting for the anger, the tears, the giving up. Grace was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed, turned around, and walked away. Carter's stomach dropped. This was it. She was leaving. They'd finally done it. But then they heard her footsteps coming back. Grace reappeared. She was carrying 3 pairs of bright yellow rubber gloves. She tossed 1 pair to Carter, 1 to Trey, kept 1 for herself. Then she walked straight into the paint, her shoes squelching in the mess. She knelt down, right in the middle of all that color, and looked at them. "Well," she said, "this is either going to be the biggest mess we've ever cleaned, or the biggest art project we've ever made. Your choice." Carter blinked. "What?" "You heard me. We can scrub this up, and it's just destruction. Or we can make something beautiful first, then clean it." She pulled on her gloves, grabbed a sponge, and started making swirls in the paint. The boys stood frozen. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Grace looked up at them. "You coming? Or you just gonna watch?" Trey moved first, walked into the paint, pulled on his gloves, knelt beside her. Carter hesitated, his whole world tilting sideways. Then he followed. The 3 of them knelt in the paint, making patterns, swirls, stars, handprints. Carter used his sponge to make a shape. "It's a dinosaur." Grace laughed. "I don't know how to make dinosaurs. Show me." So he did, and Trey leaned over to fix his brother's technique, making the tail longer, the head bigger. They weren't destroying anymore. They were creating. Grace's apron turned red and blue. Paint splattered on her arms, her face. She didn't care. Carter laughed, actually laughed. The sound surprised even him. Trey smiled, that real smile that had disappeared 11 months ago. They worked together, 3 people covered in paint, making something beautiful out of complete chaos. And none of them heard the front door open. None of them saw Justin standing in the hallway. None of them knew he'd come home early, or that what he was about to witness would change everything. Justin stood in the hallway, frozen. His briefcase hung from his hand, tie loosened. He'd come home early because his afternoon meeting had been cancelled. He'd expected to find silence, or screaming, the usual sounds of his broken household. Instead, he heard laughter. His son's laughter. He walked toward the living room, stopped in the doorway, and his breath left his body. Grace was kneeling on the floor, covered in paint, red on her apron, blue on her arms, yellow streaked across her cheek. Her hair had fallen loose from its bun. She was smiling, and beside her, his sons. Carter, laughing so hard his whole body shook, actually laughing, that deep belly laugh Justin hadn't heard in almost a year. And Trey, quiet Trey, he was smiling, talking, showing his brother how to make the dinosaur's tail longer. Talking. Justin gripped the doorframe. His knees felt weak. "Make the head bigger," Trey said, his voice clear, strong. Grace laughed. "I'm trying. I'm terrible at this." "Here." Trey took her sponge, showed her, patient, gentle. Carter bumped her shoulder. "You really can't draw." Grace swatted him back. "That's why I have you 2 to teach me." They went back to their creation, 3 people kneeling in chaos, making something beautiful. Justin's eyes burned. This wasn't a maid managing his children. This was someone loving them. He stepped back into the shadows, didn't want to interrupt, didn't want to break the spell. He watched as Carter looked up at Grace, his face serious suddenly. "You're not going to leave like the others, right?" The question hung in the air. Grace stopped, set down her sponge, looked at both boys with eyes that held their own pain, their own loss. "I don't leave people who need me," she said simply. "That's not who I am." Trey leaned against her shoulder, natural, trusting. Carter nodded, went back to his dinosaur, and Justin felt tears slide down his face. He'd spent 2 months searching for someone to control his sons, to fix them, to make them normal again. But they didn't need fixing. They needed presence, they needed patience, they needed someone brave enough to sit in their mess and say, "I'm not going anywhere." They needed Grace. That night, after the boys were bathed and in bed, after the floor was clean and the paint was gone, Justin found Grace in the kitchen. She was washing the last dish, yellow paint still on her elbow. "I saw what you did today," he said quietly. Grace stiffened, turned slowly. "I've been trying to find someone to manage them," Justin continued, his voice rough. "I didn't realize they needed someone to just be with them." Grace relaxed. "They're not difficult, Mr. Powell. They're hurting. There's a difference." "I know," his voice cracked. "I just forgot how to see it." Silence stretched between them. "I want to offer you the caregiver position, formally, triple your salary." Grace shook her head. "I don't need triple." "Then why stay?" She looked at him. "Because those boys chose to trust me, and I don't take that lightly." Justin nodded, swallowed hard. "Thank you," he whispered, "for staying when everyone else left." Grace smiled softly. "Thank you for letting me." Footsteps on the stairs. Carter and Trey appeared in the doorway. "Is Grace in trouble?" Carter asked, worried. Justin looked at his sons, really looked at them. "No, she's staying, permanently." Both boys exhaled, relief flooding their faces. Trey whispered, "Promise?" Justin knelt down, eye level with his sons, for the first time in months. "I promise." Carter's lip trembled, then he crashed into his father's arms. Trey followed. Justin held them tight, tears falling freely now. Grace turned to leave. "Give them privacy." But Carter reached out, grabbed her hand. "You're part of this too." She stopped. Trey nodded. "Stay." Grace knelt beside them, and Justin didn't pull away. 4 broken people, holding each other together, learning that family isn't about blood. It's about who stays.